Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, FSSC 22000 version 6, What You Need to Know. And before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few items so that you know how to participate in this event. You have joined the presentation listening through your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join audio over the phone, just select phone call in the audio box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and then the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to the presenters by typing them into the questions box of the control panel. And you can send those questions in anytime during the presentation. We are collecting them and we will address them at the end. LRQA is one of the world's leading providers of food safety and assurance solutions, ensuring safe and sustainable food across the supply chain. And by combining strong values, decades of experience in risk management and mitigation, and a focus on the future, LRQA supports clients as they build safer, more secure, and more sustainable businesses. Our panel includes Jacqueline Setti, North American Representative for FSSC 22000, and Remco Peters, Technical Manager, Customized Assurance at LRQA. And with that, I'd now like to turn things over to Jacqueline.
Thank you very much, Karina, and good morning to everybody. So as Karina described, so what we're going to talk about today is FSSC 22000 version 6. And just as an introduction, I'm sure many people are familiar with FSSC 22000, but for those of you that are not so familiar, FSSC 22000 is a GFSI benchmarked certification program. It is the only one that is wholly based on ISO management systems, and it's one of the fastest growing certification programs at the moment, with nearly 32,000 certificates worldwide. It is a true management system, and that will be reflected later on in the presentation. It's based on ISO 22000, the management system standard for food safety, and supporting prerequisite programs. In addition to that, we have our additional requirements, which FSSC, Foundation FSSC writes, and those are the requirements that have been updated in version 6. We have a robust integrity program, and we cover the whole of the supply chain. So moving forward, so why version 6? So one of the reasons, so why version 6? So as I said, we are wholly based on the ISO management systems, and one of the main drivers for the development of version 6 was the revision of ISO 22003 into 2022. Now, this is a standard that provides the requirements for certain organizations providing audit and certification services to the food industry. So we're obligated to stay aligned with ISO 22003, and this contributes to harmonization through the industry as it defines sort of categories, audit duration and competencies. So we need to align with 22003. We also wanted to take the opportunity to drive impact to achieving the company's sustainability goals. One of our visions in FSSC is to create a better world, and we wanted to use this opportunity to incorporate some sustainability objectives to help companies meet their goals. And also, we had given a survey earlier this year. We are driven by the market and our stakeholders. We have input in order to maintain FSSC 22000 up to date and to meet our objectives and continuous improvement. So these were all incorporated into version 6 to make it a better scheme. So some of the benefits that we believe that we have now introduced into FSSC is the requirement to monitor and control food loss and waste, which is an important objective to contribute to a company's sustainability goals. There is up to about 20% loss in the supply chain of usable food, so we want companies to start thinking about that and achieving their own sustainability goals. We also now incorporate some quality control parameters, which we believe will add value to FSSC 22000. We have been wholly a food safety management system, but a lot of customers have requested that there is an element of quality that is inseparable from food safety. So we have incorporated some quality control parameters. We've also clarified the requirements for food safety and quality culture. We do have food safety quality, we believe, built into ISO 22000 requirements, but we wanted to bring in a means of monitoring food safety culture within a company. We've also introduced methods to monitor and protect the integrity of our certificate. With 32,000 certificates around the world, it's very important that when you receive or you ask for a certification, receive a customer's or supplier's certificate, that it is a genuine FSSC 22000 certificate. So we've provided some enhanced protection by the requirement to include a QR code on the certificate. And we've also added some additional support within the scheme to provide help in the interpretation and some added detail to contribute towards the new requirements. So I think I'm going to hand over to Remco, and if there's anything you want to add onto some of the things that I've already said, Remco, as a user of FSSC 22000.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. First of all, welcome to this webinar. Good day to all, wherever you are on this world. Yeah, maybe something to add, Jacqueline, although I think you give a very good summary of the benefits. It's also something what, of course, is also applicable for FSSC version 6, are also intermediate improvements of the standard itself. For example, if you look at version 5.1, which is now being created and published a couple of years ago, in the meantime, we also have developments in the world itself, like e-commerce, or think about plant-based products for replacing meat products. Yeah, this is now more embedded in the version 6 as it was in version 5.1. So that's very great to see that. If I move to this slide, specific changes in the scope, that's one of the elements which is changing in FSSC version 6, which is all related to indeed the ISO 22003 sub 1 document, which is indeed an accreditation document for which we all need to follow the rules if we have audits conducted at companies. So one of the basic changes which is over there is some shuffling in the food safety categories. Not always extended. We also see some simplifications in place, but one category which is being added is now the C0, as you can see here on the animal conversion, which is basically meant for slaughterhouses. That food safety category has been added due to competency differences for the auditors themselves. So it's a very important one for companies themselves, that you have a competent auditor in place. Another one which is being added is the B3 food safety category. It's related to pre-process of plant products. So plant products which are not processed in the way that's being gutted or moved in a different form as it is as now, but being grading part or cooling part or aeration part of the products, which has all been a gray area. Is this falling in B1, B2, or in C2? For now, it has been defined that there is a new category B3 in place. Does this mean something very specific for companies who were previously being certified in the scope C1 if you're looking at the slaughterhouse, or in C2 if you're looking at the pre-process of plant products? No, not in this case, but what you will see is that there will be some changes on the certificate itself. As you probably will have recognized, is that on the certificate the category is being mentioned, and that of course will be different than in the FSSC version 6. One which is also changed is about pet food. pet food for dogs and cats and pet food not for dogs and cats, these are moved from category D to A and D to B to category C. Specifically for organizations who are having activities in pet food not for dogs and cats, they will have a change because the prerequisite program will change from the prerequisite program for feed producing organizations to food producing organization. And that can really be a change in the requirements which are in place. There are some other category changes as well. For example, category G previously was defined in G1 and G2, and now it is being clubbed together to only category G. So that's really a simplification, which is always nice to have. What we also see is some scope changes. As example, in FSSC version 6, F2 is being added. So that's the trading and broking module. But what we also see is that category A, which is really the primary sector, has been removed due to the small number of companies which were certified for this category. And also FSSC 20,000 quality is being removed. But as we will see later on, the quality control requirements are being now in place in FSSC version 6 itself. Jacqueline, do you have something to add?
No, not at this time. The only thing that I would add, there's also been a slight change in organizations that have off-site kitchens, which previously were in category E, have now been added to category C. And again, that's all to do with competence and aligning with ISO 22003. So there may be a little bit of impact there with that adjustment.
Yes.
Over to you.
Yes, thank you. If you look then at the new requirements, and specifically if we may refer that back to FSSC version 6 part 2, this is the really part of the document which has a high impact for certified organizations, because as you know, there will be these specific requirements from FSSC themselves. And if you make a separation, there are some requirements which are changed. So something is added or something is removed of it, and we have a couple of new requirements, and those new requirements are standing on this slide. So if you look at the first one, specific requirements on food safety and quality culture. Previously, it has been said that food safety culture, that's something which is already embedded in ISO 20000 2018 version. But now it's being said, well, let's put it as a separate clause in place and make it a little bit more clear to both the organizations, but also to auditors, what is meant by food safety culture. I think everybody on this webinar will realize that food safety culture is more something you feel than you really have the evidence of it, of how it is. And most part of the auditors, if I may speak to that part, is within a couple of hours you know what the culture is, but then you have to find somewhere the evidence. Is my feeling okay or not okay? And as part of these new requirements, it's more detailed, more objective driven. So the auditor, but also the organization, shall have a more clear understanding of what is required from the organization itself. And by example, in that specific clause, it is mentioned that an organization shall put in place now really culture objectives for the food safety and the quality. And that is related to, by example, communication, training, employee feedback, engagement. But also these objectives shall be measurable with timelines, and also shall be part of the management review. The second new requirement is about quality control. I think this can be sometimes for some organization be challenging, especially when you currently have a food safety management system purely based on food safety management system itself. But I also know, as Jacqueline was already pointed out, that a lot of companies have quality aspects in place themselves and is fully integrated. And for those organizations, this typical requirement will be much more easy to comply with, or you already comply with it currently at this moment. So to give a little bit more detail on this one, A quality policy and quality objectives shall be in place. If you're looking at the finished products, specifications will be defined for quality aspects, and these shall also being controlled and being measured. And also these quality elements shall be part of the internal audit itself. Does it replace an ISO 9001 certificate? No, not at all. So don't think of it quality control. Now I have to do ISO 9001. That's not necessary, but some parts need now to be included in these new requirements. The third one is related to equipment management. And if you think of it, it's quite logical that some requirements are now coming into a food safety management system standard. If you have new equipment in place or new processing in place, you want to have a system in place that you know everything goes okay as I start up a line. So think about hygienic design, think about the intended use of the equipment, think about successful commissioning before you start really production, but also think about the possible effects on the existing systems if you have a new equipment in place. These are all related to these requirements. The next one is food loss and waste. For which Jacqueline already mentioned, this is all to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. And also for me, and I think for some other companies as well, it's quite a strange requirement in place for food loss and waste. What does it have to do with food safety? So also for myself, I need to revise myself. This is a new requirement as well. But on the other hand, if you look at the requirements out of the world related to the Sustainable Development Goals, it's also quite logical to put something in place. And if you look at that part, if you look at food loss and waste, what we see is that, by example, organization does have a byproduct, does have supply products. What are you going to do with those products? If you have donation in place, you also want to be sure that if you donate those products, that the people who consume that products still have a food safety product in place as well. The last requirement, which is completely new in the part 2, is about the communication. In itself, it's not really new. If I may refer to FSSC version 5.1, we had already the obligation in place that in case of serious events, so in case of a recall or in case of an earthquake or whatever, that the certificated organization already contact the certification body and inform the CB about what happened over there. And based on that part, we already had to define that to FSSC Foundation when it was really at the integrity of the certificate. Now it's also becoming an additional requirement in part 2 for the organizations itself. Basically, implementation will be the same as we had in the past. If organizations which are certified by LRQA, you can use our website to notify in case of serious event or a recall. Jacqueline, did I forget something?
Yeah, no, I don't think you have forgotten anything. I think that was really good. And it's very good to get your perspective, and, you know, particularly on the quality control in relation to sort of a quality management system, and that one does not, you know, counteract the other. And the food loss and waste, yes, there has been some question about that in a food safety management system, but I think that it's important to start thinking about. I think the management system approach really is all about improving efficiency, and efficiency itself will reduce waste, and it's an extension of that, but it's something that we need to start thinking about. You know, we talk about food security, and there's no point in having a system if it's inefficient. So I do think it's something good to think about, to incorporate a little bit of additional thought. And definitely, as you said, a lot of these things were already in version 5.1, but version 6 is strengthening those requirements and supporting, you know, the ISO requirements. So that's what FSSC does. It adds to the ISO requirements to bring it into the GFSI benchmarkable platform. So I think it's a great summary. Thank you, Remco. So just moving on. So we do have some additional elements that again strengthen our existing requirements. So your input on this.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so those added elements on existing requirements, this gives a short overview. What are then the requirements? What are the additions? So it's something about recycled packaging as raw material input, specifically for FSSC packaging module. Logically, that if you have recycled packaging materials, that also some risk assessment is in place. What is this kind of material, and how do you ensure that this is not harm your product? The second one is dealing control of claims on product labels or packing. Especially if you look at the claims on the product, yeah, if you put in place it's allergen-free, sugar-free, whatever it is, then as organization now you also need to provide the evidence that you really comply with those claims which are in place. The third one related to artwork management and print control, also related to FSSC packaging. This is dealing if those companies are changing the artwork, what kind of processes are in place to ensure that the prints which are there or the packaging material which is there, that it really is related to what the specification is indicating and that no mistake is in place. The fourth one is related to transport tanker cleaning. Two elements are added to this one, related to if a company ships finished products in tankers, what kind of requirements are in place, and the opposite way, if you buy bulk products in tankers, what kind of requirements did you place to the supplier that you are sure that your product, raw material or finished product, is not contaminated with the previous loadings. I know already that a lot of organizations does this already have in place in their current food safety management system, and now actually it has been added to the clauses as well. For the matter management, that's quite a typical one. Half and half. It was already in place in your HACCP system. So, for example, many organizations already does have a metal detector in place, does have sieves in place or an X-ray detector in place. Now it's being also extended that if it's not part of your HACCP system, then still you need to do some part of a risk assessment to ensure that you don't need any equipment to remove foreign articles. And if you have to do that, then of course you need to place something in place which can remove that foreign matter itself. Typically, this aspect is being added for all categories except for F2. I have to say it out of my head. Also, what we see is that, of course, we have a prerequisite programs in place, like for food, the ISO TS 20002 sub 1, and you have the other ones as well. But still, you see that those different prerequisite programs does have different requirements for matter management, and this is a more holistic one to have everything in place. The next one is ongoing shelf life verification, which sounds logical if you see that if you have put in place a shelf life on your product, that you have some verification in place. Is it still kept the same under all kinds of conditions which are there? The next one is validation of cooking instructions for ready to consume products. The next one is allergen management. Some changes are here in as well. For example, that more requirements are in place to the validation and verification of the allergens, especially when you have more allergens in place for which in one production line you have multiple products which has different allergens, that you are sure that you have not any cross-contamination, or when you could have it, that you have taken those measures to mitigate it as far as possible. Think also about employee training on management, on allergen management aspects, but also think about that if you have an allergen system in place, that you have also a yearly review, but also review if you have changes in your processes or in your products, or if you have a recall based on allergens, that you also review your process as well. Is it still working as it should be? And are there any additional actions to be taken? The last one is dealing with environmental monitoring, which is now also more extended information in place, that you have to do an analysis, a trend analysis on the results you receive by your environmental monitoring. Jacqueline, something to add?
Good. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I think you covered it very well. And in support of this, I don't expect everybody to remember all of these things, but on the FSSC website, we do have a change document which details a lot of these added elements as a comparison of 5.1 to version 6. So we do have a change document that would detail a lot of these changes. And as Remco said, many of these already existed in FSSC 22000, but this is a strengthening and a clarification. And from our point of view, we've tried to make the scheme a little bit clearer. We also will be updating our guidance documents and adding more guidance documents to supplement the scheme to help users and certification bodies. So I think that was a great summary, but there are some changes. Some of them are not hugely different, but hopefully they are an improvement to the scheme, and it's all part of our continuous improvement and harmonization in keeping the supply chain safe. Just a few other little changes that were involved, some of them sort of administrative, some of them are relating to documentation, some of them just relate to our certification bodies or our accreditation bodies, and they're all included in the scheme documents which are on the website. But some of the other things that we believe are all part of continuous improvement, as I mentioned, is the addition of the QR code, which will now be on the certificate, and this is all part of maintaining the integrity of the scheme and securing the validity of our certificates. As you know, FSSC is part of, have some multiple documents. There were 6 parts in the additional requirements, and there were, I think, 9 annexes. These have now been reduced. The FSSC 22000 is now 5 documents, and we've reduced the number of annexes because we have eliminated some aspects and improved others. We've also updated our ICT requirements, which is the involvement of remote audits, and we have updated those. We now allow a 2-part or a blended audit or a remote and on-site audit, and those requirements are all detailed in that annex. And just to say that there are, if the traders and brokering is at this time the only audit that can be done completely remotely, but we reserve the totally remote audit for unforeseen circumstances that we can resort to, as we did during the COVID pandemic. And we've also had to realign our audit duration with ISO 22003. And we have, so the calculation for audit duration has been adjusted, and that we have added the requirement for an extra half a day to cover the new requirements in version 6, throwback there. And so there may have some impact on your audit duration, but that you can discuss with your certification body, which will realign the audit duration to meet the current requirements. So anything else, Remco, that you think that I have missed? Any other changes that you think would be significant that would have impact?
No, not really. But what I really like is the update of the ICT requirements. That still it is possible to have a partly on-site, partly remote audit being in place, or even vice versa, which is even a bigger improvement. That's really what I like. That FSSC is standing open that part of especially the document elements, which can be done not at the office, at the
Yep.
certified organization itself, but can be done remotely.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
I really like that, and I also do understand that based on the GVSI requirements, it's still not possible to have a full remote audit unless you have very specific elements in place.
And these are defined, you know, the serious events are
Yeah.
defined on the website. And as Remco said, you can do the on-site followed by the remote portion of the audit, and you can also conduct unannounced audits with that element of the remote audit. So good. So good. Moving on, Remco. So how are we going to get everybody onto version 6?
Yeah. Okay. Of course, version 6 is being published by the end of March, and what FSSC Foundation has defined is that we actually can start with performing audits at the 1st of April 2024. So we all have 1 year time to adapt on these new requirements, which are quite a lot also for certification bodies. And I also think for FSSC Foundation to look at all kinds of changes which are there. We all need time over there. So from the 1st of April 2024, we will start with FSSC version 6, and then we have 1 year the time to upgrade all certificates, which shall be completed by the 30th March 2025. It sounds like far away, but it is not. Yeah, indeed. And as a result of the upgrade audit, of course, the certificate will be changed and version 6 will be put in place on it. What still needs to be taken in mind is that on itself, the expiry date will not be changed. So that will be the normal 3 years cycle, which is there. In the meantime, I have already received some questions about, what about unannounced audits? And FSSC Foundation has put in place that an upgrade audit also can be done via an unannounced audit itself. So that's also good news that if the unannounced audit must be there because of the 3-yearly requirement which is in place, frequency which is in place, that it also can be done during an unannounced audit. And also for FSSC has created an upgrade process and which is put in place in the website itself, for which of course you also can find all documents.
Very good. And other documents that we have available as support in this process. So as I mentioned, we do have the change document, which details the changes from 5.1 to 6. So I do recommend that everybody goes to the website to review that document and, you know, realize the impact that it will have to you. We also have the upgrade process detailed that Remco mentioned, and that describes how the upgrade process can be done, and where you have unannounced or where it fits into your cycle. You will be issued with a new certificate regardless, because it will now indicate version 6 and it will now have the QR code for security purposes. We've also as I said, have guidance documents available. We're hoping to expand these, particularly on the interpretation of some of the new requirements. We already have a series of guidance documents, environmental monitoring, food fraud, food defense. These will be updated to reflect version 6. And then we also have a series of new documents planned that will be produced over the year. So I do advocate everybody goes to FSSC22000.com or FSSC.com. The website is FSSC.com, but because we are adding to FSSC with the addition of our social governance scheme, FSSC 24000, you have the option to go to FSSC22000.com for the scheme documents, or FSSC24000.com if you're interested in the social governance. So do go to the website. We also have an opportunity to answer any additional questions on version 6. And just as a reminder, we do have a webinar on the 11th of May, a public webinar that will be presented. It's a global public webinar presented by our Marketing Director, Cor Grenveld, and Kelly Mulholland on version 6 and the changes and the details. So if you need more information or you feel like you have more questions to answer, please tune into that or register it so that you will have access to that. And I think that really kind of sums it up from me. If you have anything to add, Remco, and anything else that we've forgotten to add that you think is important?
Yeah, if you talk about support, 3 elements I want to mention. First of all is that by the end of June or earlier, the companies will receive a client information note via our client portal, in which we will also describe some explanations about the upgrade process from version 5.1 to version 6. What we are also working on is on a gap analysis, which is or will become available at our websites. That will become soon available. And last but not least, what we also are now working on is on some training elements as well related to FSSC version 6. So keep our websites at sight and look at it regularly, how far we are with publication of these modules as well.
Fantastic, that's great. So I think I've exhausted everything that I wanted to say at this time. And I'm going to ask Karina if there's any questions that we have that we could answer at this point.
There are. Thank you both also for the presentation. And we do have several very good questions that have been coming in. And just as a reminder, if you do have your burning question, just look for a questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel and type it in there. So the first question, are the transport bulk requirements also applicable to food gases like MAP?
So I think that it would be risk-based. Remco, what would your opinion be? I'm not sure that I have an immediate answer for that.
Well, if you look at those gases which are being in category K, this will fall under those requirements which are applicable. So also based on risk, also review these requirements and yeah, look at what kind of actions are necessary for that. Yes.
Yeah, what is applicable to you? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next question. With these changes to version 6.0, would courses as lead auditor or internal auditor under Scheme FSSC 2000 version 5.1 have to be retaken?
There are requirements for competence and qualifications, and I would direct you to the upgrade process on the website. So competencies will be reviewed.
Okay. And what about head office audits? Can these be on a different version to the site-based audits?
No. So all audits need to be to the same version. So if you are conducting a head office audit, it will need to be to version 6 or to version 5.1. If you're doing an on-site or a remote audit, they all need to be to the same version. So no, it has to be on the same version.
Okay. Next question, does product label claim include the requirement of verifying sustainable biodegradable packaging claim?
So FSSC doesn't allow claims to anything else. They have to be verifiable by that owner. So we don't cover claims. So Remco, do you have anything to add to that? Your responsibility for claims.
But that's a good differentiation, Jacqueline. On one hand, indeed the requirement is in place that if you put a claim on the product, that you can have the evidence that you have made your verification as an organization. Still, it is not possible to put a claim in the scope which will come on the certificate. So an allergen-free product, put it in the scope on the certificate, it's still not allowed within FSSC 22000? That's a very good question, because yes, that can be confusing. Yes.
Thank you. All right. How does the timeline of version 6 affect our existing 3-year cycle, as we will be audited for our first surveillance audit this year?
Remco, do you want to answer that, seeing as you covered timeline? But
So if you have this year your surveillance 1, then in 2022 you had your certificate renewal or your stage 2. So normally your certificate will then be valid for 3 years, which will then expire in 2025, if I say it correctly. That will mean that in depending on when that audit was done and when the audit will be done in 2024, if then already it will be a transition to version 6. If the audit is after the 1st of April, then still your version 6 will have the same expiry date of the date of 2025. So basically, the 3-year certification cycle will remain, and the upgrade to version 6 will be, I almost would say, the second part of your 3 years validation of your certificate.
so the expiration date will stay the same unless it's a recertification audit.
Yes.
But your certificate will be replaced to reflect version 6.
Okay. Can stage 1 against V6 version 6 take place before April 1st, 2024, and stage 2 to be conducted after April 1st, 2024?
So I think, this is going down to the details, and I think if it's stage 1 before April the 1st, I think it can be conducted to 5.1 and stage 2 conducted to version 6. So, and again, check the upgrade process, but I think we can split the stage 1 and the stage 2. Do you agree?
I confirm. Yes, I confirm. Yeah. So in that case, indeed, stage 1 can be to version 5.1, and stage 2 after the 1st of April will be against version 6. That is possible. That is possible.
Right. Thank you. Can you elaborate more on the requirement about the ongoing shelf life requirement?
I would refer you to the update document and to the scheme documents, unless Remco has some expertise on that.
No, I need to say, please indeed go to the details.
Yeah.
Luckily, I don't have all the requirements out of my head. I also need to look in the documents myself. What's exactly
It's
stated.
very new to us, so we won't make any claims or statements about the actual requirements. The requirements are fully documented on the website, so please go there. And then once you've consulted the requirements, then feel free to come back either to Remco or to FSSC with specific questions.
All right, next question. With respect to food loss, are we to set goals for maximum loss and manage this similar to a quality objective?
Again, I would refer to the scheme requirements. I think it would also depend on the individual situation, and that there will be guidance coming out to support that. So.
Okay. Could you restate the upcoming webinar date and how to register?
Yeah, it's on the 11th of May. It's actually at, I think it's 7 a.m. Eastern time. So it's early in the morning, but if you register, of course, you will get the recording, and it will also be on the website, but it's on May the 11th. And if you go to fssc.com, you will find the registration details. So please go and register, and you will be you'll be included in that.
All right. Is the requirement to use recyclable packaging obligatory?
I can't answer that. I don't know. Again, I'll have to go back to the actual small print. I won't go into the details of the particular requirement, so I can't answer that at this point. Remco, can you?
No, before I say something wrong.
Well, we're really only able at this point, because it's new to all of us, so we're giving an overview. And for all specific details, please go to the website and the requirements.
Okay, and this may be similar here. Given that the new version added use of recyclable packaging material, does this require that all food manufacturing use recyclable materials?
I don't think it's a requirement to use it. I think it's the control, so when you do use it. So again, the clarification should be in the standard, and if it's not, then please answer the question specifically related to your situation and the standard.
In addition to that, I do not recall that it is obligatory to use recycled materials. I hardly can imagine. It's more that if you use recycled materials, that you do have control measures in place to ensure that you are not adding contamination to your product.
Yeah, or adding dyes or contaminations. So yeah.
Okay. Did I hear it right that feed production will now also be covered as food production and will follow all requirements for the production of food?
Yeah. Good question. No, there is some details on that part. You have D1 and D2. D1 is for feed production, animal food production. That remains under feed, and that will become actually category D. What is now being replaced is D2A and D2B, which is talking about pet food. And you have pet food for dogs and cats and pet food not for dogs and cats. And especially for pet food not for dogs and cats, this one was under the prerequisite program for feed production, which now becomes under the prerequisite program for food production. So for those companies, so pet food not for dogs and cats, there will be quite a significant change in the requirements out of the prerequisite program.
Because formerly food for dogs and cats was already under that prerequisite program. It's just at least FSSC certified them under the manufacturer of food. So there's not a huge change there, but there is a change for food and non-pet food animals, non-pet animals.
All right, so the next question, there's also a comment. So great webinar. Do we actually need to take any other measure for recycled packaging in comparison to non-recycled packaging?
Again, I think we have to refer you to the standards. So the recycling aspect is not my expertise at this time. So I think I'm going to gen up on recycling after this webinar. You've identified a gap here, so thank you very much. This is a two-way thing, right? So, and it's very interesting. Please keep asking your questions, because even if we can't answer them, it's very indicative of what we need to cover in our next webinar. So tune in on May the 11th.
We don't have FSSC 22000, but we'd like it. Can we go straight to version 6 now, or do we have to get version 5, then transition after March 31st, 2020?
So I think this is a question for Remco, and it really depends on how long the interval is between now and when you get certified. So if you are in a situation where you can get certified this year, then you will be certified to 5.1. When you start doing your assessments with your certification body, you need a few additional elements to get up to speed, and you don't get qualified, you don't get certified, or you're not in a situation to be audited until next year. And then you might start, as we said, stage 1 in 5.1 and then stage 2 in version 6. So it's a question of timing. But as according to the timeline, if your audit is before the 1st of April next year, you will be certified to 5.1.
Yeah, good explanation, Jacqueline. Maybe something in addition is that the time difference between a stage 1 and a stage 2 audit is at least 3 months, up to 6 months, before the stage 2 needs to be conducted, a maximum 6 months.
Yep.
So there's also taken something into consideration that, by example, you have stage 1, let's say in November, and then you have your stage 2 in April 2024, and then in April you can go for FSSC version 6. But still, it is also possible this year to go to version 5.1 and do the upgrade audit to version 6 starting from 1 April 2024.
Great. Next question. Can you elaborate on supply chain's increased role in version 6?
I don't understand the question. So you mean suppliers to a certified organization? Is that, I think that's what we're talking about, transparency of the supply chain. I think that some of the requirements are strengthened to improve that. But again, it will depend on the situation, and I will refer you to the standard. So some of those requirements have been strengthened, and we have added some additional detail for explanation. But again, I will refer you back to the standard.
Okay, I think we have just a few more questions left. Bovine meat slaughterhouses have 2 macro processes, slaughter and boning. The category for them would be CO.
Yes.
Yes. So if you look at a really good question, where is the shift between C0 and C1? And indeed, C0 is all about slaughtering, but includes also deboning. And C1, if you talk about then the meat products, is really to make it ready to have it consumed, and all kind of products created out of the cow piglet or whatever animal it is. And if you talk then about deboning, that can be part of C0. C1 never can include slaughtering and those related aspects, but it can actually also start from deboning. And that's really the shift over between the C0 and the C1. And if a company does have slaughter plus also the really typically getting ready that those meat products for consumption, then it's also possible to have the 2 categories, the C0 plus the C1.
Okay. Can you elaborate on whether compliance to ISO 9001 is required?
No. So no. So obviously FSSC 22000 is a management system. It's on the harmonized structure, so it integrates very well with 9001. So you can easily run the 2 management systems side by side. But you do not have to have ISO 9001 certification to run FSSC. They are separate. You need to meet the requirements of ISO 22000, but not 9001. And the quality element in version 6 is to add value to FSSC 22000. It just incorporates some quality control elements. It is not intended to replace 9001 certification or a quality management system. It is purely to add value to FSSC to meet your customers' requirements.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up here in just a minute. Just a couple more questions. When do we need to get started?
Today.
Yeah.
Go to the website. You are starting already. I mean, you're starting by being here. So I think it's a really good start.
Indeed, I think it's very good to get the knowledge of FSSC version 6, especially go through part 2 and see what are the gaps which you need to fulfill. I already heard from some organization, well, it seems to be nothing. say, well, maybe you need to read it twice. But it's really depending what you do already have in place. So by example, the previous question was about quality control. Once again, if you have already those elements in place, yeah, that will take away a lot of activities you need to do. If you have already a system in place for food loss and waste to get everything there, yeah, that will take away some of those elements. But if you don't have them, yeah, I would recommend not to wait up to February 2024 and then looking what is FSSC version 6 about. That's maybe a little bit late. So it's really depending on what is already in place in your organization, and it really differs from one company to the other one.
And as I said, do download the change document too and read that. And I think that's a very good start.
Is the 6.0 upgrade audit a shorter, more concise audit as it's just upgrading, or is it a full audit?
It may need some additional time if it's a surveillance audit to cover the additional requirements. So as I said, the audit duration calculation has been adjusted to align to 22,003. So it will be a fairly comprehensive audit, and it may need a short increase in time. But it will need to be, as I said, it will need to be recalculated by your certification body.
Yeah, in addition to that one, it is not only the upgrade. So the upgrade will be done during a normal audit. So during your next surveillance audit or unannounced audit or certificate renewal audit, the upgrade will be done. So it's not only for version 6, it will go through all clauses of the standard as part of the normal audit, including then the upgrade.
Thank you. I thought that, yes, thank you for pointing that out. I took that as read. Thank you.
All right, and then this is our last question. Can we accept a declaration letter from our wheat flour in tanker supplier instead of the agreement mentioned in the new requirement?
I think that would depend on the individual situation. I think that would depend on, you know, on assessment or your auditor. I can't answer that. We'd have to review that on an individual's circumstance. Remco, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, based on that part, you have the clause itself, which makes the requirements, and then you have the implementation of that requirement, and that are for me two separate elements. So first of all, the organization needs to review the requirements, see what is the impact on the own organization based on the risk assessment, and then you need to look, how can I implement this? And maybe you can say, well, I leave it over to everything to my supplier, which is actually part of it. But of course, you also can have a different way as well. So as Jacqueline is indicating, it's really depending from one organization to the other one. It's impossible for us, I think, to give a straightforward answer on that part. Sorry.
Yeah. It will be part of your own verification.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up and bring it to a close. Any final thoughts from either of you?
No, I just hope that this has been of use. I know it's a fairly general overview. Again, I would recommend going to the website, looking at the change document and reading through all the requirements. And then if you have any questions, either direct them to Remco and LRQA for their expertise, or you can ask a question of FSSC 22000. But you know, often the specific questions need to be answered on a case-by-case basis, as Remco said. So I hope that it's been useful, and keep your questions coming because it helps us in our continuous improvement. Remco.
Yes, and I can echo what Jacqueline is indicating. The standard is also new for me, so also looking at it, and these type of questions also help me to see, yeah, what can we do, what is the interpretation, and I also understand that FSSC Foundation will give us more information during the next months. I also want to thank you very much for joining this session, and I hope it was useful. And yeah, once again, if I may give some advice, please start with looking at FSSC version 6 and don't wait up to 1 week before you have actually the audit in 2024 after the 1st of April, because that can be a little late. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacqueline and Remco, for your presentation and taking the time to answer the questions. And thanks also to our audience for taking the time to join and also submitting so many great questions. And as we've already mentioned, for more information, please visit lrqa.com. And with that, we'll end the webinar. Please enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.